Welcome ladies and gentlemen to my video tutorial on shading and textures for artists. My name is Ian Strange, also known as Ianardo, and I specialise in pencil and crayon drawing. My techniques differ from many other artists and might even seem counterintuitive. Let's start with our choice of drawing paper. A lot of artists' sketchpads have paper with a rather coarse grain, and I try to avoid these. Sometimes I use the backs of these sheets because the grain is often finer on the reverse side. What you need is a finely grained paper to permit a wide range of textures on the finished drawings. That is less important if you're doing very large drawings. You also need both sharp and blunt pencils and crayons, as well as hard and soft. If you buy a few sets of crayons, you should find that some are softer than others. Since crayons break easily when sharpened, it is best to sharpen them with a craft knife and carve 4 flat sides to get a sharp point that is reasonably strong. Or maybe sharpen 2 sides to create a wedge shape. A fairly easy texture to try drawing is fur or grass. In both cases, scribble the fibres just as you imagine them to be. Then go over again, darkening a few gaps between the fibres for effective shadows. Choose your pencil according to how fine and dark the fibres are. For grass, since one's view is likely to cover a large distance and depth, the pencil work technique varies as you get deeper into the distance. Further away, the individual blades are not noticeable, so now the pencils need to be worked more sideways. Further into the distance, the undulations in the ground show up light and dark in the horizontal bands. Also, remember that to get depth in scenery, the atmosphere affects the colour and shade. Even further into the distance, things tend to look paler with less contrast. Colours become weaker and often more blue, depending on weather and lighting. When drawing the surfaces of solid objects, shiny things can look really impressive in a drawing, yet they are the easiest to do. Surfaces with a very matte finish can take time and effort to perfect. So let's look at shiny things to start with, such as a chrome-plated finish. The appearance is entirely of the reflections. In a convex surface, these reflections are diminished in size, giving a wide panoramic view of the scenery behind the viewer. A classic car hubcap is a good subject to practice on. I'm doing most of today's sketches from my imagination, so these will not be ultra-real looking, but will hopefully illustrate the points I'm making. Another point with shading is that mixing crayon and graphite pencils creates a darker shade than you might expect, so avoid mixing these in the pale areas and use just crayons for lighter colours. I'll be returning to this hubcap later to improve it. Here's an important tip when drawing contrasting light and dark areas. When you draw the outline, consider which side of the outline will form the final edge between the dark and light areas. If it is surrounding a light area, then you will need to draw the outline to a larger overall size. For example, a white brick against a darker surrounding. Draw the rectangular outline oversize, observing that the inner edge of the outline will become the edge of the brick. Also, if you accidentally draw the brick too large, it is easy to later reduce its size without using an eraser. Returning to shiny objects, if the shiny surface has colour, such as a gloss paint finish, then we have to judge the amount of colour that is apparent, balanced against how much reflection to show. When you look at a shiny surface square on, you will tend to see its colour and maybe only a faint reflection. When viewed at a shallow angle, the colour is less noticeable and the reflection becomes very clear. For example, if you drew a glossy dark mug, the middle of it would have its colour showing strongly with just a hint of the reflections. As you observe the mug towards the left and right edges, the colour gradually fades away and reflections become more prominent. I've based this sketch on a black mug I have at my side. I'll be returning to this to add finishing touches. For matte or satin surfaces, I often use both blunt and sharp pencils. A blunt pencil is useful for covering a large area evenly, but the grain of the paper might stop the texture from being as smooth as you are aiming for. To smoothen the texture, go over with a sharp pencil or crayon. The sharp point gets into all the nooks and crannies of the paper's surface, which fills the gaps in your shading, unless you prefer blending to smudge the shading. Be careful though, the sharp pencil will ruin the even texture if you apply it too hard. The trick is to use it very gently and build up the shading in faint layers. This also allows you to vary the shading subtly. Matte surfaces have very subtle variation in shade, and it takes concentration to get it exactly right. An easy trick to make your drawing look realistic is to have a really big contrast between highlights and the darkest shades and shadows. And if you want to do one of those 3D effects to make the drawn object appear to stand out of the page, then draw a shadow of the object as though it is sitting on the page or standing very close to it. I've omitted part of the outline of this hubcap to give the appearance of glare from the sun's reflection. I usually let the paper colour look after the brightest highlights, but you can also try a white pastel pencil. If using an eraser, be careful not to damage the surface of the paper. And here's the all-important finishing touch, the shadows of the mug, just to make it look that little bit more realistic and 3D. Remember that observing and studying the things you draw is just as important as practicing drawing. I hope this has helped. If you'd like to learn more about drawing with pencils and crayons, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching.